Humans vanish from the radiant conclave without warning, leaving centuries of galactic custom in tatters. Leadership scrambles to hide their panic, insisting that everything remains under control despite an avalanche of crises. Frontier worlds mutter about slow-moving committees while they watch desperate pleas buried under endless protocol. Rumors emerge of a new human-led coalition, forging swift solutions that outpace even the conclave's fastest paperwork. Mid-level officials start to question whether tradition is worth more than saving lives. Tensions rise when ragtag rescue missions outshine the grand old bureaucracy at every turn. Noble counselors cling to hollow debates, but fresh alliances form among neglected systems, and nobody wants the conclave's sluggish approach anymore. A single envoy slips away to see if the rumors of human-led, results-first governance are true. What they discover could transform the conclave forever or plunge it into chaos. Loyalties are tested as the galaxy teeters between age-old custom and a bold new order. Stay with us if you want to know how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. A swirl of colored lights illuminated the colossal docking pylons as ships from across the galaxy converged on Talarian Station, the seat of an ancient interstellar alliance known as the Radiant Conclave. Established countless generations ago by the first starfaring species to band together, the Conclave had always prided itself on orderly negotiations and elaborate protocols. Its high-towered architecture and labyrinthine halls were designed to evoke solemn respect for centuries of lawmaking, trade pacts, and cosmic treaties that spanned half the known spiral arm. Yet beneath the shining surfaces and grand declarations lay the telltale stagnation of a system grown rigid with age. Younger nations muttered behind closed doors that the Conclave's endless committees had become less about solving problems and more about preserving power for a handful of old civilizations unwilling to adapt. When the announcement came that humanity, the relative newcomer that many dismissed as too brash, had officially left the Conclave, the shock reverberated across 1,000 star clusters. No one had expected a direct break. For centuries, membership in the Radiant Conclave had been the ultimate hallmark of arrived civilizations. Abandoning it was tantamount to heresy. And yet, the humans had done precisely that, delivering a succinct message, then cutting off all official diplomatic ties. The Conclave's High Archivist scrambled to find a precedent in the annals, but no such record existed. A quiet dread settled over Talarian Station. If one species could simply walk away, who else might follow? What most delegates did not realize was that the humans had been preparing this move for decades. They had grown tired of trying to push their urgent initiatives, disaster relief, border security, streamlined shipping lanes, through layers of subcommittees. Despite repeated pleas from the frontier worlds, the Conclave's leadership refused to fast-track any measure that threatened to upend long-standing hierarchies. So the humans, typically irreverent of tradition, decided that preserving old relationships was pointless if it meant sitting idle while entire star systems buckled under cosmic calamities. They left without ceremony, and news of it rippled through the galaxy faster than any official channel could spin a rebuttal. On Talarian Station itself, no one felt the impact more keenly than the mid-ranking functionaries who had worked closely with humans on joint ventures. Among them was Tasha Renfrew, a tireless liaison who had spent years shuttling between the human delegation's forward offices and the Conclave's diplomatic citadel. She had grown to appreciate humanity's impatient drive, a trait that often put them at odds with the Conclave's methodical approach. When the recall notice flashed in Tasha's personal data feed, telling her that the humans were gone, she simply could not believe it. She had dozens of projects still in mid-negotiation, but their offices stood empty, a dull sign reading "closed for indefinite leave" blinking in the half-lit corridor. Rumors escalated of entire star lanes falling into chaos now that the humans withdrew their ubiquitous commercial freighters and open trade agreements. Council subcommittees formed overnight to investigate the repercussions, only to find that the humans had also suspended or canceled any shared resource programs. Where once they had delivered advanced terraforming gear to outlying systems or swooped in with rescue ships after solar flares, now they were nowhere to be seen. The rest of the galaxy was left in a precarious limbo. Many species had come to rely on the humans' quirky but effective approach to solving pressing crises. Others felt relief, convinced that the barbaric upstarts were out of their element. Still others found themselves anxious that perhaps the humans knew something about the Conclave's vulnerabilities, something that had driven them to exit before an impending collapse. The Radiant Conclave's leadership, for its part, scrambled to reassure the public that everything was under control. They announced an immediate session of the High Council to discuss emergency legislative reorganization. It was, by all accounts, the same pattern repeated for centuries: more committees, more formal addresses, fewer real solutions. In that uneasy climate, Tasha Renfrew found herself standing outside the private office of High Speaker Archimus, a venerable figure from one of the oldest starfaring races. She had scheduled an urgent meeting, determined to glean some sense of direction from the conclave's top echelon. The door parted to reveal a sumptuous chamber lined with archived scrolls and crystalline data tablets, the typical blend of archaic decoration and cutting-edge technology that the conclave loved to flaunt. Archimus reclined on a floating dais, for eyes half-lidded in preoccupation. He greeted Tasha with the formal gestures, a slow pivot of antennae and a sweep of robed arms that signified mutual respect. She responded with the required polite bow. Then she pressed him for answers. Why had the conclave simply let humanity slip away? Would they not mount a special delegation to bring them back? The High Speaker's face grew taut with an expression Tasha recognized as a mix of pride and underlying fear. The conclave does not beg, Ms. Renfrew, he said. We have in place centuries-old protocols for disaffiliation. The humans have exercised that right. If they see error in their haste, they may petition to rejoin in the future. High Speaker, Tasha replied, controlling the tremor in her voice. With due respect, we both know this is not a trifling matter. The humans have built relationships beyond the conclave. They hold key trade routes in the Orion Spur frontier worlds, rely on them for advanced medical shipments. If they stay independent, it could fracture the entire interstellar economy. Or worse, it might lure others to leave the conclave if they see it as worthless. Archimus's antennae drooped slightly. We are not worthless, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The conclave stands on tradition. We have navigated countless crises. This will pass. Tasha realized, with growing despair, that Archimus embodied the conclave's fatal flaw. The old powers believed that time and formality could weather any storm. They refused to see the magnitude of what the humans had done. She bowed again, mind whirling with thoughts of how she might act on her own. Outside that office, the station's corridors teemed with anxious delegations. She overheard snippets of conversation in a dozen alien tongues, speculation about the next steps, about possible conflict, about forging pacts with the humans outside the conclave structure. The galaxy was at a crossroads, and no one seemed certain which path to take. The real shock came a few cycles later. Rumors surfaced of a new coalition, spearheaded by the humans, forming outside conclave space. They had apparently established an independent trade and defense network, offering membership to certain star systems that had felt neglected by the Radiant Conclave's snail-paced governance. Some whispered that the humans had drawn up a streamlined system of agreements, drastically shorter and clearer than the conclave's labyrinth of statutes. Tasha gleaned bits of intelligence from old colleagues in the human liaison offices, who quietly hinted that the new coalition was already operational in certain frontier zones, dispatching relief ships faster than the conclave could even finish a committee meeting. Conclave loyalists dismissed these accounts as exaggeration. They pointed out that humans had nowhere near the grand fleets or centuries of organizational structure that the conclave wielded. But Tasha sensed that the same irreverent, unstoppable energy that drove humans to leave the conclave would fuel them to build something else in record time. She tried voicing her concerns to superiors, but was shooed away. We have formed a special subcommittee to investigate the matter. We appreciate your zeal, Ms. Renfrew, but let the process take its course. All the while, crises continued to mount. A resource drought in the Helion cluster, flaring tensions in the Mersai Verge, an outbreak of a new spore-based plague along the edges of settled space. Tasha sat at her desk in the diplomatic wing, monitoring a rising tide of pleas for help. The standard protocol demanded that each be assigned to an appropriate subcommittee. That subcommittee, in turn, would schedule a hearing no sooner than a month's time, and would eventually draft a resolution requiring unanimous approval from the relevant council members. The pattern repeated with mind-numbing predictability. Tasha wondered if this had been the final straw for the humans, countless catastrophes filed under pending review. Her job now felt like enabling a monstrous inertia. She felt powerless, complicit. Then came a sign from outside official channels. A small cargo ship arrived at Tellurian Station, carrying relief supplies for the plague victims in the Mersai Verge. It flew no conclave colors, nor any standard diplomatic insignia. Instead, it bore a stylized emblem that Tasha later learned was the crest of the so-called Frontier Unity Compact, rumored to be humanity's new coalition. The ship's captain, a wiry older woman with a matter-of-fact demeanor, unloaded medical crates and left them in one of the station's docking bays with instructions, distribute this to the Verge. We're not waiting for committee clearance. She refused to register any official flight plan. After finishing her business, she departed before station security could even process a standard cargo manifest. The symbolic significance was tremendous. A single ship, ignoring the conclave's bureaucracy, delivering urgent aid more promptly than the entire bureaucratic apparatus. Word spread like wildfire among the station's lower-level staff. Suddenly, these Frontier Unity rumors took tangible shape. Tasha realized that if the humans were truly orchestrating a parallel system of crisis response, it might outshine the Conclave's half-hearted efforts. She made discreet inquiries among colleagues, only to find that many mid-tier officials had been approached by representatives of the new coalition, offering swift solutions if the Conclave was too entangled in protocol. Fearing that the galaxy stood on the brink of a major split, Tasha resolved to gather real evidence. She quietly prepared to leave Talarian Station on a personal trip, hoping to find the humans and see for herself what they were building. She filed for a short leave of absence, citing personal reasons, something that was rarely done among Conclave employees but not forbidden. She stuffed a small bag with essential gear. Before departing, she recorded a final, coded message to certain progressive allies in the diplomatic wing, outlining her mission. If the Conclave does not adapt, it might soon collapse under its own weight. I must see what the humans are up to. I fear we have precious little time. The day she left, the station was abuzz with news of another half-dozen star systems failing to get any action from the Conclave regarding deadly surges in local cosmic storms. Meanwhile, rumors abounded that these same systems had quietly reached out to the humans, who had allegedly dispatched specialized vessels to mitigate the storms. No official confirmation existed, only whispered accounts from captains who had glimpsed advanced gravitational stabilizers that did not match Conclave specs. Tasha wondered how humanity had advanced so quickly in areas that the Conclave still considered under review. She boarded a modest courier ship bound for the outer verge, forging a path that took her far from the usual trade routes. The pilot, an old friend, nodded at Tasha's encrypted voucher and asked no questions. As the ship pulled away from Talarian's gravity well, Tasha found herself looking back at the station's grand spires for what might be the last time. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, in ways the Conclave's leadership had refused to believe. If the humans had truly created a new center of power, it might soon overshadow the old seats of authority. She inhaled a steadying breath and gazed into the swirling tapestry of distant stars, bracing for the revelations ahead. Tasha arrived at the planet Obterra after a week's travel along little-monitored routes. It was a backwater place, according to Conclave records, a mid-level colony struggling with a volatile atmosphere and limited resources. Yet as soon as she disembarked, she saw signs of infrastructure that outstripped anything the official data suggested. New docking platforms soared above the planet's harsh winds, and an entire ring of cargo modules circled overhead in low orbit. She recognized multiple species working in tandem, some of them not even Conclave members. The pilot mentioned that these expansions had occurred in just a few short months. She found a short line of battered individuals waiting for entry to a large facility marked with the same stylized emblem she had glimpsed on that cargo ship. The shape, a half-circle with an extended star cluster inside, had already become known in rumor as the crest of the Frontier Unity Compact. Tasha joined them, receiving curious looks from an Avari merchant with scaled cheeks and a tall insectoid shifting from foot to foot. No one asked for the usual labyrinthine documentation. Instead, a checkpoint official simply scanned Tasha's ID chip, then waved her forward with a polite nod. Inside, she discovered a bustling operations center, cargo pallets, emergency medical gear, and a rotating schedule of supply runs to various star systems. The environment reminded her vaguely of the busy diplomatic wing on Talarian Station, but with a crucial difference. No one seemed to be waiting for sign-offs or long procedure. People tackled tasks in real time, calling out the next ship's readiness or finalizing the day's route logs on the spot. A small group of uniformed humans stood near a large holo display, discussing priority assignments for the Mersai Verge plague response. Tasha approached them, introduced herself as a Conclave liaison, and was greeted not with suspicion, but cautious courtesy. "That's still more formal than how we greet each other," joked a lean human man with short-cropped hair. "I'm Gus Thrame, Frontier Unity Logistics. You must be Tasha Renfrew." His accent hinted that he hailed from Earth's American sector, if Tasha recalled her xenolinguistic training. She nodded, amazed that they already knew her name. "We had a tip you might swing by," he explained. "Heard you were one of the few Conclave staffers who actually tries to solve problems instead of drowning them in committees." Tasha tried not to blush. I want to understand how you're operating out here. The Conclave sees it as a defection, but it looks more like you've set up an alternative that's faster? Maybe more effective, but are you not concerned about ignoring established treaties? Treaties that never get ratified mean little to starving colonies, Thrame replied with a rueful grin. We do a triage approach, respond to crises first, worry about red tape last. If the Conclave can't keep up, that's their choice. We're not trying to undermine them, but we won't stand still while entire worlds suffer. Another human with a calm, authoritative presence stepped forward. She introduced herself as Commander Elaine Markova, one of the earliest participants in humanity's break from the Conclave. She was older, with lines around her eyes that spoke of experience in tough negotiations or perhaps battlefield operations. "Welcome to the Compact's main coordination hub in this sector," Markova said. We're shipping out med pods to 3 plague-afflicted systems in the Verge, but we also have relief missions to the Hellion cluster for their drought problem. If you want to observe, jump right in. We can always use an extra pair of hands." Tasha blinked. "No forms to sign? No weeks of orientation? Are you sure that's allowed?" "Allowed by who?" Markova's wry expression said it all. The Frontier Unity Compact recognized no higher authority than its own membership. It's allowed by the local need. And that's all that matters. Moments later, Tasha found herself helping a multi-limbed Roshtech engineer calibrate temperature settings on stasis pods. She was used to verifying at least a dozen clearance protocols for cross-species equipment, but here it was just, check the power readout, align the temperature gauge, done. The engineer, whistling in a cheerful staccato, grinned when Tasha managed to implement a small optimization gleaned from Conclave technical references. "If only your big council worked as fast as you just did," the Roshtech teased. Tasha found herself inexplicably proud and equally alarmed. She was basically circumventing standard practice with each step. During a break, she wandered the facility, noticing representatives from at least a dozen species. She recognized the pale-skinned Orindii from the outer reaches, an amphibious people rarely seen in conclave halls due to complicated environmental needs. Yet here, the compact had integrated them seamlessly, with specialized aquatic bays right next to the corridor. She glimpsed a tall, four-armed Juro from the Calteran expansions chatting amicably with a human pilot about the best route around a swirling debris field. The synergy was immediate, unforced. Tasha's mind reeled. Could it really be that simple? A short time later, alarm klaxons sounded a meltdown on one of the newly built orbital reactors. Tasha expected everyone to freeze while some chain of command debate ensued. Instead, Markova barked a few quick orders, singled out 2 specialized teams, and within seconds they were racing to the upper ring to address the meltdown threat. Tasha followed at a safe distance, wanting to see how they handled such a crisis. The meltdown hazard was no small matter. In conclave space, an entire commission would have been convened, with subgroups analyzing risk assessment, environmental containment, and liability issues. But as Tasha arrived at the upper ring, she saw the teams already sealing off compartments, venting certain sections to vacuum, and applying advanced coolant rods. The meltdown was contained in under half an hour. No forms. No committees. Just immediate response. She found herself trembling slightly, a mix of shock and awe. This was precisely what the humans had kept demanding from the Conclave, agile response to crises. The Conclave system, built on centuries of cautious negotiation, had once been vital to prevent wars. But it had become a leaden relic in the face of daily emergencies. Tasha realized that might be the entire reason behind humanity's departure, not to undermine galactic unity, but to build a more functional unity. The frontier worlds evidently craved that approach. The question was whether the old guard would accept or resist it. After the meltdown crisis subsided, Tasha confronted Markova. "Surely you must see that many in the Conclave are outraged, even frightened. They claim you're setting a dangerous precedent by ignoring established laws." "Which laws?" Markova shot back, not unkindly. "The ones that took centuries to adopt and still failed to help half the galaxy's outlying systems? Or the ones that keep entire civilizations locked in resource disputes while bureaucrats bicker? We tried changing it from within. The older powers wouldn't budge. So we left." Tasha sighed. "But can't you find a middle ground? If the conclave collapses, it might trigger widespread chaos." Markova's gaze softened. "We're not out to tear the conclave down. Let them exist. Let them handle the formalities if they wish. But crises can't wait. If they adapt, we'll happily coordinate. If they remain stuck, well, the rest of the galaxy moves on." She then invited Tasha to join a scheduled supply run to the Hellion cluster to see how they operate in the field. Tasha hesitated. This would be a full commitment to stepping outside official conclave channels. But she recalled the desperate pleas piling up in her old office, which the conclave was still reviewing. She found herself agreeing, heart pounding at the realization that she was now complicit in circumventing standard procedure. The transport that carried Tasha to Hellion soared across star lanes no conclave ship had used in decades. The route was considered unvetted, which was conclave parlance for, we never formed a subcommittee to map it. Yet the humans had obviously found a quick path. They joked about how many unofficial routes existed, discovered by bold explorers. The shortage of red tape evidently made them more flexible. Tasha tried to reconcile that with her training. The conclave taught that every route must be meticulously charted, authorized, placed in a database, then updated annually. But while they had done all that for centuries, they'd left entire swaths of space effectively inaccessible. The Hellion cluster crisis, Tasha learned, involved a failing climate control system on a newly colonized planet. This planet was essentially a giant farmland that fed half a dozen smaller worlds. With an advanced climate regulator malfunctioning, the fields faced scorching temperatures that threatened catastrophic crop failures. The local conclave representative had, of course, petitioned for emergency repair crews. But the relevant subcommittee was buried under other business and had yet to issue formal approval. As the human-run transport dropped into the planet's atmosphere, Tasha braced herself for the typical complexities: security checks, local bureaucrats demanding lengthy negotiations. Instead, an official from the colony greeted them with open relief. He recognized the new coalition's emblem. "Thank the stars you made it," he said. "We just lost another field block. The regulator is offline in Sector 14. Markova and her team wasted no time. They had brought a specialized climate modulator plus spare parts gleaned from wherever the Frontier Unity got them." Tasha noticed that some components bore serial markings from half a dozen different species: Ovari condensers, Terran heat exchangers, and a brand of AI software from an advanced civilization that the Conclave had yet to formally invite to membership. Each piece likely circumvented a whole set of Conclave import regulations. The combined system was installed in hours, not weeks. She watched local temperature readouts begin to stabilize. The farmers cheered, hugging the outsiders who had saved their harvest. Tasha had never seen such direct gratitude in all her years of properly sanctioned missions. In the aftermath, as Markova's team performed final checks, Tasha wandered the farmland, marveled by the simplicity of it all. So many crises could be solved quickly if not for red tape. She overheard local leaders praising the humans for responding the moment we asked. She realized that, from a PR standpoint, the Conclave's approach looked painfully incompetent. No wonder entire star systems were drifting toward the Frontier Unity. The Conclave had insisted on preserving strict protocols, but it was losing hearts and minds. Yet Tasha also worried about the bigger picture. The Conclave's central purpose was to maintain broad peace among a huge array of species. Could these upstarts preserve that peace on a larger scale? Or would their improvised approach falter under pressure from major powers? As Tasha rejoined Markova near the transport, the latter must have sensed her inner conflict. "Not all solutions are perfect," Markova said. "We're building the plane while flying it, so to speak. That might lead to mistakes. But letting entire worlds starve or burn while we talk about them in committees feels like the bigger mistake." "I see that," Tasha murmured. "But the Conclave's leadership sees your approach as reckless. They fear anarchy if other species follow suit. Maybe if you had tried to implement partial reforms." "We did," Markova said quietly. "We spent decades pushing for them. You saw how that ended." She looked out over the farmland, where colonists now rejoiced in the renewal of their crops. It's no small thing to leave an institution like the Conclave. But we had no choice. Enough was enough. The next day, Tasha received a coded transmission from one of her progressive allies on Talarian Station. The message read, "High Speaker Archimus and senior Conclave members are furious about these renegade rescue missions. They plan to label the Frontier Unity as an illegal confederation, possibly to bar them from recognized trade routes." Tasha's heart sank. That was precisely the kind of confrontation that could spiral into open conflict. She showed the message to Markova, who sighed. "It doesn't surprise me," Markova said. "But we're not simply going to vanish because the Conclave decides we're illegal. In fact, we might expand faster if they do that. Many systems resent the Conclave for ignoring them. Seeing the Conclave attempt to forcibly isolate us might drive more worlds to join us." Tasha's mind spun with the potential consequences. Could this lead to a galactic schism? Some worlds allied with the Conclave, others with the Frontier Unity? We risk plunging the entire spiral arm into turmoil. "It's a possibility," Markova admitted. "But maybe the Conclave will come to its senses and negotiate. We're not the villains here. We're just forging a different path." Before Tasha could respond, another crisis alert came in from a planet far across the region. She watched, marveling again, as Markova's people jumped into action. Another rescue. Another direct fix. No endless deliberations. Tasha realized that, for better or worse, the galaxy was changing before her eyes. The humans and their new allies were forging an alternative that, while messy, got real results. She mulled over whether to return to Talarian Station and attempt to mediate. Maybe if she could speak in front of the High Council, show them what she had witnessed, how effectively the new coalition handled emergencies, some compromise might be found. On the other hand, the Conclave's leadership might simply dismiss her testimony or declare her a traitor. She felt that old sense of duty to preserve unity, but also a new conviction that the Conclave's old ways had to adapt or risk extinction. A week later, Tasha made her decision. She arranged passage back to Talarian Station, carrying with her extensive records of the Frontier Unity's relief operations, hoping it might at least open some eyes in the High Council. Markova wished her luck, warning that the Conclave might not be receptive. But Tasha believed it was worth trying. On departure day, the farmland colony gathered to bid farewell, many of them crediting Tasha as the diplomat who bridged the gap. She felt undeserving of the praise. Her role had been minimal, but recognized that simply seeing an official from the old Conclave working amicably with the new coalition gave them hope. She boarded the transport, heart heavy with worry and determined to do what she could to avert a catastrophic rift. As the vessel lifted away, Tasha glimpsed the planet's horizon, dotted with fresh farmland saved from scorching heat. She realized that behind her lay a demonstration of what dynamic, outcome-oriented cooperation could achieve. Ahead lay the possibility of endless committees or, worse, a crackdown on this renegade confederation. The next few cycles would decide the fate of the Radiant Conclave and possibly the entire region. Would the old powers loosen their grip and adapt? Or would they double down, trying to crush the new movement? Tasha braced for the confrontation, hoping that the seeds of dialogue might be planted before the galaxy reached a breaking point. On Delarian Station, Tasha found an atmosphere of simmering tension. Rumors flew that the High Council might soon vote to sanction any star system trading with the Frontier Unity. Meanwhile, the Conclave's mid-level staff whispered that multiple smaller civilizations were on the verge of pulling out. As Tasha made her way through the labyrinth of official chambers, she noticed an unusual sight. Crowds of petitioners, many from frontier worlds, chanting that they wanted real solutions, not more inaction. The station's security presence was more visible than ever, with robed guards posted at strategic intersections. Tasha went straight to the offices of Counselor Sarates, one of the few moderate voices. She presented him with her data from the Helion Cluster's rescue, the meltdown containment operation, and the plague relief missions. Sarates read through it, eyes widening. They did all this without formal authority, he asked, half in awe, half in dread. Tasha nodded, explaining how quickly the coalition mobilized resources. Sarates rubbed his brow, lips pressed in a tight line. If we try to punish them, we'll look like tyrants. But if we do nothing, we risk more members drifting away to join them. At a closed-door session, Tasha was given a rare chance to speak. She described what she had witnessed, cooperative efforts among multiple species, ad hoc but undeniably effective. She acknowledged the Conclave's proud tradition but warned that the galaxy's new challenges demanded faster action. A hush fell over the council chamber, filled with delegates who had rarely heard such blunt testimony from an internal staffer. In the end, however, the High Council tabled the discussion, forming yet another subcommittee to evaluate the matter. Disheartened, Tasha realized they were simply stalling, perhaps believing that the Frontier Unity would eventually falter on its own. She felt a flicker of frustration so profound she almost marched out, but she remembered that not everyone in that hall was blind. A few delegates, including Sarates, confided that they would push for a genuine compromise, an emergency protocol allowing immediate interventions in crises, circumventing normal bureaucracy. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless, if they could gather enough votes. Whether that would suffice to bridge the growing divide remained uncertain. The question echoing in Tasha's mind was whether a centuries-old institution could truly reform in time. For each day they deliberated, the Frontier Unity expanded its influence, forging real alliances. Tasha found hope in the few who recognized that the Conclave must adapt or lose all relevancy. But the old guard dug in their heels. In the swirling corridors of Telarian Station, the question, what if humanity and their allies overshadow us, was on everyone's lips. A few cycles later, Tasha received word from Markova that a major cosmic threat was emerging in the Argent sector, a rogue black hole drifting dangerously close to populated systems. The Frontier Unity planned to mount a massive gravitational shield operation. The Conclave's own response was still under review. That, Tasha realized, might be the final test. If the Frontier Unity saved Origin while the Conclave debated, the galaxy's loyalty might decisively shift. The station was rife with speculation that war might break out if the Conclave labeled the Unity's unilateral actions as trespassing. Standing at the viewport above Telarian's central axis, Tasha gazed out at the starfield. She could almost sense the future fracturing into multiple paths. Perhaps the Conclave would watch helplessly as the new coalition rescued the Origin sector, further cementing its reputation. Perhaps the Conclave would try to forcibly block them, leading to confrontation. Perhaps a miracle of negotiation might unify them after all. She felt a deep longing for that last possibility, but the pragmatic side of her suspected it would require a radical shift in thinking, something the old leadership seemed incapable of. Still, she had done what she could, brought back evidence, tried to open eyes. If the Conclave refused to adapt, it might fade into irrelevance, overshadowed by a more direct, flexible, and results-driven approach. Some might call that the unstoppable wave of progress, others a dangerous collapse of venerable structures. As for Tasha, she stood at the crossroads, uncertain which side she'd ultimately end up on. But one thing was certain. The humans had set events in motion that no committee or tradition could contain. A new era beckoned, for better or worse, and the entire galaxy would soon discover whether the Radiant Conclave could still illuminate the path, or whether it had already gone dark in the face of a changing universe.